Hello and welcome to another WeAreDevelopers Live. We just had a new sound in the photos popping up, so that was new, and it was very short, so you didn't even manage to get it enjoyable. But like, okay, so we know that this is coming next time as well, so that's exciting. I'm here again with Dan Cranny. I'm Chris Hallman. I'm the VP of Developer Relations. And how are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm very well. It's I feel like I say it every week, because Wednesday comes around so quick, and there's always so much happening that sometimes some things happen on the Monday, and by the time we get to this show on the Wednesday, we're already like flooded by new news and stories, and the thing that happened on Monday goes to the back of the line. So yeah, it's looking forward to today. Looking forward to welcoming our guest on in a minute, and yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yep. So this time we got Christian Schepp here as our guest this time. You probably know him from like his podcast, which is Working Draft. It's in German. If you don't know German, then you don't know him from that. But Chris has been involved in the German community and the web community for decades as well, right? So how did you get started? When is your first website, or when is the first product that you built?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for inviting me first. So answering your question, I think I started or I created my first HTML page in 1997, around about that time. So back then I was still working in the 3D animation industry, and we had a customer sitting, I think we were in Cologne, and the customer was, I think, in Berlin, and they had to, had a look at the things we were producing. And so we came up with the idea of building a website to show them on the website what we were working on. And yeah, so I was the guy that was like the last remaining one when they were looking for somebody doing web. And so I became, or these were my first steps in web development.
Cool. What 3D tool did you use? Was it Blender or was it one of the later ones?
So no, it was Maya from Alias Wavefront back then. Now it's I don't know what the current owner is. And we also started with a beta version of version 1, so we were really early adopters. And we did like motion tracking stuff with Kidara software and applying that to our characters, and yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, we were talking at the State of the Browser. I met with Andy Clark and some other people, some other old people of the web, and we talked about animation technologies that we had. And he now did a post on Smile, SMIL, which is like the W3C standard for animations that we completely forgot about, which is still supported in browsers, weirdly enough. And when it came to 3D, I remember Vermel, like VRML, and that came and went without a hitch because nobody wanted to install.
Yeah, I think you needed a plugin, and even then it wasn't really looking good. So yeah, even compared to what was possible back in the days already in 3D software, it wasn't looking good. So no, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I think I had a look at it, but yeah, it was just not nice.
It's weird, but when we tried to do 3D worlds in a semantic way that you actually could write it with code, it kind of felt this like half not naughty word, half-baked thing. And I remember, like, for example, Second Life had this really weird text format to create worlds in it. Like, it wasn't even a programming language. I think it was more describing a scene or something.
Okay.
And yeah, that was also bizarre back then.
Yeah, I found the whole idea of Second Life kind of bizarre, which is why I didn't invest into it and have never written such a world. But yeah, sounds interesting. But it still exists, I think, right? Somewhere.
I think so. Yeah, it could be probably weird by now. I think there was also the what I didn't like about Second Life was that the monetization was from the beginning. Like, it was supposed to be just you can buy real estate and sell it. And it's a bit like that vibe coding demo where the first thing he said is like, oh, I wanted to make a game I can get sponsored and get money for, rather than just like, I wanted to build a game.
Yeah.
So
there were some interesting things though. I remember being at university and it being the case that my university had bought some land in Second Life, and they were using it to do these really early sort of almost role play experiments for people that were studying, say you're studying law, they could go to like the courtroom and they could play out a kind of court case. And I suppose it was like early days, like augmented reality, VR kind of all rolled into one, and didn't really work out. I'm pretty sure they don't more, but interesting idea.
I think it was a politician in America or someone that tried Second Life, and somebody had like a whole parade of dancing knobs in the background, and that was just bizarre as well. So yeah, that was interesting aspects of what you can do with these technologies. So let's go through a few things that we thought might be interesting to talk about this week. So let me share my screen here. The first thing that caught me, which I totally forgot about, because I worked on Edge and I saw like all the stuff that's coming soon and like not coming soon. And Edge now has this split screen feature, so you can actually take a link, and I should do it on the other computer. You can right-click a link and you can say like open link in split screen window, and this one splits the window here. Like basically, instead of having to resize the window, or instead of having to use a frame set or use CSS for doing that, it just opens two different files in those different pages. So you can now, and this is the video that Dan was excited about, 50 years of Microsoft. But you can also drag and drop things into that one as well. And if I could do that without while I'm talking. You know, you can basically see all the things in these documents here as well. And what I found really bizarre is that there is so far no programmatic way of doing it. It's still an interface feature. So if I go to the Edge split screen page, which is now a marketing page, it actually has a button that allows you to go into the split screen mode, the try now. And yesterday, I spent about 2 hours trying to reverse engineer what's going on here and to find the function and the API, because I love finding APIs that companies don't want to make public and then blog about it. But in this case, it seems to be a one that's only internal. So I asked people on the Edge team what they know about this. And so far, it's not actually featured yet. But there is an explainer that actually says, like, if you use an target underscore split or window open with the target underscore split, it would open in that split view. I think this is really, really cool. I think for research reasons and stuff, I think that's a very nice feature. And I mean, Dan, you told me Arc had something similar, right?
Yeah, it was actually one of the reasons I started with Arc, because exactly what you're saying, researching, just the fact that we do it so often now, a lot of us have got, whether it's ChatGPT open in the side or something. So just having those two views and not having to have another monitor for it, it's great. But I do think, I've talked before about this, there are issues with Arc. I can't actually join this very stream on Arc without having audio issues. Don't know why. So it's nice to see that some of these other browsers are kind of giving you a bit more choice over how you view the web and how you kind of arrange those windows without having to break out into multiple different windows and tabs and it getting very messy. So yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think about that proposal to do an underscore split as a target value?
Yeah, so the first thought I got was, so it's cool, but you always have to think about how this can be misused. And I wonder if maybe news pages will use that to split your screen and to show you like half a screen of advertisement or these kinds of things. So yeah, I don't know. So that's what comes up my mind, because I've seen so many web features being abused in the past. Like, for example, popovers or pop-ups, which started as a great feature, but then got abused, and now you can't open pop-ups, or it's hard to open them, and they are out of fashion, so to say.
Yeah, I think notifications was one thing that really got annoying really quickly as well. Like the idea that a web app needed notifications, and then every bloody website asked me to sign up for its notifications, and I'm like, no, I don't care. You have one article that I read right now. You're the newspaper of like Buxtehude in Germany. I'm not going to subscribe to your newspaper because of that one article. So I'm not going to subscribe to notifications from you.
Yeah, it's also a matter of when they ask. So I think it's okay if they ask, but maybe not at the very first visit when you already clicked away the cookie banner and an advertisement, and you haven't even seen the content of the page, and then they start asking you if you want to subscribe to push notifications already. So yeah, that's basically just the wrong approach. Yeah.
Substack does this really annoying thing as well, that when you go to the page and you go to another page and you come back to it, it actually shows you the sign up for the newsletter rather than the article that you came for. every single time, and you're like, no, I just want to come back right now. Like there's the unfocus and focus management for marketing reasons, as you said, with that split screen is also another thing that people keep using in a very strange manner. But yeah, so Microsoft 50 years. This is actually amazing because in 26 this month, I'm also going to be 50 years. But I only worked 8 years of that in Microsoft, not 50 years. I would be richer if I did. But yeah, I found it funny that Bill Gates posted that thing, and he actually had the he showed the source code of Altair Basic, and the site is really cool and retro. I really enjoyed that one, and
amazing.
I think it's
nice.
just we give Microsoft a hard time, and I mean, when I started in computing, I was on a Commodore 64 and a Thomson TO-770, and then later on, PCs were like, oh, I had Linux on mine because I hated Microsoft. It was like the evil empire. And yeah, and they did horrible things in the past to a degree, like in terms of pushing competition out of the market and these kind of things. But they turned around. But I don't know, lately it seems like, I mean, I'm using Mac for decades now, and I use Windows when I need to, but I still see like there's no flocking of developers or influencers back to Windows, no matter what we tried in Microsoft. Do you think that's just a matter of like Apple being too cool, or is there just something that Microsoft is missing out on that people would embrace it?
So I've been a diehard Windows user since forever.
Okay.
I tried Linux, of course, once in my life, and it was, I think, in Ubuntu, and it was nice until I had to update it to the next version, and then it broke. And I also remember that I had played with OS2 Warp back in the days, so that was maybe 1995 or something. But I switched to Mac 2 years ago, and the reason was that Apple Silicon was just so much faster. It was incredible. I was pair programming with a colleague, and we had a project where we had to compile 40,000 static pages, and that took me 20 minutes on my machine. And for some reason, the thing we were pairing for required him to build these pages, and it took maybe 3 or 5 minutes. And then I was a bit surprised, and I asked him if he just compiled a subset, or maybe, oh, did you just compile all the pages? And he said, sure, I did all the pages. And then I was like, okay, that's just incredible. So I'm going to switch, even though I have to go through this like a valley of tears first to get accustomed to how the other platform works. But that went quicker than I thought. So I still have the Windows keyboard layout so that I don't close applications when trying to like write the @ sign. And most of the stuff is available or identical on both platforms. And then there's a lot of stuff that happens in the web nowadays. So, and there's no difference.
Do you use a German layout or like a proper developer?
No, I've the German layout because that's basically in my muscle. So so maybe one day I'll switch that also, but one thing at a time.
I can switch between English, US, and German quite quickly now. Realize typing something in, and when the wrong key appears, I'm like, oh, I know which setting is going on right now. But I always found like the German one, like with Alt, GR, and Q for @ sign and these kind of things. It's just like there's so many weird things. There's also that shortcut on Mac to switch from one code to another. I think it's Option Shift Space, or what is it? Command Shift Space. One of those.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's basically Control Option and Space to switch between the different settings. So you can see here that it's like GB and QZ up the top there. Okay. And I keep doing that because accidentally, and then out of a sudden I'm like, okay, what's going on here right now? Like, I think it's tricky when it comes to passwords, and you have like the order wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually, when I got my work computer, as you know, Chris, it was a real nightmare, wasn't it, to try and get a Mac that didn't have a German keyboard, bought in Germany, and then sent over to the UK. And so I've just put stickers over it, and I use the UK keyboard. But when I actually set the Mac up, I didn't realize that the Y in my name, Daniel Cranny, is a Z in German. So on that laptop, I'll always be Daniel Cranes. And so, yeah, and I can't be bothered to try and figure out, go through the valley of tears, as you said. I love that phrase, go through the valley of tears to try and change it. I thought, I'll just leave it. I'm Daniel Cranes. It's okay.
It's like your Spanish colleague, Daniel Cranes.
I like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the source code thing I think was quite interesting. The only other code that I know that I have somewhere in my hard drive as well from Bill Gates is bananas.buzz, which is like this artillery duel, but with two monkeys that throw bananas at each other. And that's basically one of the first things that he's ever written in QBasic 1.0 or something like that. And yeah, that was, I thought I used that in Code 100 one time and asked people to debug it. But then I realized that would be just cruel to people that are young and not spent and haven't seen all that crap in the past. But yeah, it's interesting. I think BASIC was a very bizarre programming language. I found scaling in BASIC really problematic because you had like lines, like line numbers, and shifting things around could break everything. And you had like loops were basically connected to line numbers, and it was a really, really interesting language.
Yeah, the go-to line number thing. Yeah, the go-to command. Yeah.
Well, there is labels in JavaScript. You can actually just say anything : and it becomes a label, and you can give loops labels and break them. So that's kind of using like goto.
Yeah, but it's I don't know if it's not. So it's still part of strict mode, but somehow it's also like out of fashion. So you don't do that. Similarly to switch statements, which I love and like, and they're like the best. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what happens with labels.
I didn't know that switch had a finally keyword as well. I just learned that from going to Douglas Crockford's site at one time. So there's a finally in switch to basically when all the other features were gone through or something. I don't know. Like I don't know what use case of that is, but it's in the language.
Is it finally, or because I know of like the default? I know default. That's basically when nothing matches.
And I think there was a finally as well. Finally in switch.
Because then I learned today. I didn't know of that.
How to execute something finally.
Yeah, I think you have finally in. I think that's like in try-catch statements. I think. If I'm.
Oh, that might be that. Yeah.
But that's
anyways,
also
good stuff.
Yeah.
And The Verge talked about it in like nice pictures and stuff. In the office, there's this in the Microsoft office in Seattle. There was this cutout with all the original people from Microsoft, and at one time I stood behind that one and did the color grading, and it looked like it was part of it. So that was quite fun as well. It was really weird to see people in an office coming in and basically going to the gift shop and buy Microsoft branded T-shirts and stuff. I always found that bizarre because I'm okay when my company gives me that stuff for free, but like going there to buy it is really like a cultish kind of thing that I found weird.
Yeah, but yeah, I was a big Microsoft fan back in the days, especially around Windows 95 times. So I pre-ordered my Windows 95 and I had the beta version on, I don't know, 40 discs probably, of which, of course, the 39th disc was broken. And so we had to like get a new copy. Yeah, so as you know, so during your time at Microsoft, I also visited Seattle and Microsoft, and that was basically like a child dream coming true, like riding the monorail, all these things that were, or being on the Seattle Needle. So that was super nice.
Yeah, they did this video as well that Dan you found, and actually you found really nice.
Yeah, I love it. I just think things like this are, I don't know, they're for me exactly what I love to see, because it's got a little bit of like history rolled in. It's the creative part where they've had to kind of like visualize it and, you know, and try and sort of tap into that nostalgia. I mean, yeah, when I saw the Xbox one, that was amazing, because it was like, oh yeah, it does. I just remember when that all came out, and then you're taken back to when these releases happened. And I just love anything like this. I think it's like beautifully done. I love timeline-based UIs. It breaks out of that every site looking the same as well. You know, we see so often with like frameworks and UI libraries, everything just has the same look. And okay, it's recognizable, but it's just giving something a little bit different that you feel you can play around with and keep digging into. Absolutely love it.
It would be fun to take a look at like the accessibility of it, how keyboard accessible it is. How do you get that sidebar, for example, over if that's a keyboard control as well there? I'm going to be the spoiler again of that one, but like it's like, I mean, what did I once see the term for it? Scrollytelling instead of storytelling
is a term. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
That's a New York Times kind of storytelling. So when they have a piece on something with satellite pictures and I don't know, and then you scroll, and then they show you things and show more things the further you scroll.
I mean, it works. It's like a video without being a video. It's like a controllable video, different than a scroller bar. Like, yeah, it's not a bad idea. So 20 years of Git is the other memory we have. Have you used other version controls before Git, Chris? Or
yeah, definitely. So Subversion, of course. So that was the classic one, and it was okay. But yeah, I think there was also merge conflicts, or they existed, or maybe there were not merge conflicts, but you could override things that others were also working on in parallel somewhere. So I think that sucked. And then I also worked a little bit with Mercurial. That was, I think, like mostly when I wrote a few W3C tests a few years back. I think they are still on Mercurial, if I'm right, but I'm not sure.
Mozilla was for a long time as well. Let's count the ones that we did. Okay. CVS, SVN, Mercurial, Bazaar. That was the first one that was actually peer-to-peer. So you didn't need a server in between, so you can just do it in the office with a few people. Star Team, Visual Source Safe, Microsoft. And then Git came along, and I was very happy because everything else was just crap before that. But I think it's great to see how it's become the de facto standard and everything. We had a coffee with developers with a guy from Microsoft that found that bug in Git that actually it only takes the last 16 characters of a file name to find if a file is unique or not. So they had like changelog.md in lots of files. So they ended up having like a 2 terabyte repo rather than like 50 meg because it was only using the last 16 characters. And I don't know why Linus did that, but it's interesting to see. When you teach people as well to a degree, right, Chris?
Yeah, my co-developers, if they wish so. So yeah.
So how do you get Git into them? Like, is it just integrated into the IDE, or do you do it in the terminal?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a good IDE. So I'm sometimes I think I'm always like the one outlier, but I became a big fan. So I tried different kinds of UIs. So I remember back in the days you had Turtoise for SVN, and then there was also a version for Git. That was what I started with, and then I used SourceTree for a while. That was also nice. I didn't like the GitHub one. That was too simplistic, maybe. And nowadays, I'm a big fan of the integration into the IntelliJ IDEs. So I'm using PHP Storm, and it's just like super nice to work with it. Also, all these merge conflict solving, cherry picking, all these things.
Yeah, the VS Code one, the integration is pretty nice as well. What I like most about that one is the source control graph. So basically, it gives you a full history of your thing. So if you go through it and you realize who did what and what happened, that is basically a nice little preview directly in your editor. And I think that also helped because Yeah, I'm talking the day after tomorrow at an AI event, and I'm going to talk about like how people forget the basics of version controlling when they do like vibe coding and stuff. There was this case where somebody vibe coded an app and it was successful, and then 3 months later he lost everything because he never ever committed it to Git. He actually just rewrote the same app over and over again. So it's interesting to see that these things become just part of the IDE rather than like having to do the command line or open. You see down here, sometimes I have to use the terminal as well, because most of the time it's when something went wrong, like when you have out of a sudden a 2 gigabyte file in there and your push doesn't work because it shouldn't have been in their first place. But yeah, then you actually have to put the Git's, well, it's like the file size or the cache size. You have to push that one up to do that. I mean, Dan, you were joking yesterday that GitHub is a great place. Git is a great place to store files, right?
Yeah, because I think I mean, we've all seen it, right? Just some crazy things that people do, and like things that you almost go, I don't know if that's wrong or genius. You know, when you see it, people uploading like full films or whatever, I don't know, they're just storing all kinds on there. I mean, I think it was something that it still is a bit for me. It's still something that I feel it's not as visual as it could be. I'm very visual, and I sometimes find if something's a bit abstracted away and I'm not 100% confident with what I'm doing, and it always feels like that with Git, where I'm one bad command away from ruining everything. And so I feel like having no visual kind of view of what I'm doing is something that still kind of bugs me, and means that I'll go for maybe that what's it called, GitHub desktop as well if I can, for something quick, because why not? Because I just feel then I can see what I'm doing. And but I do feel that it's not really talked about as something that comes with learning to program. Chris, you talked about it. It's to me, it was something that I sort of went, okay, I need to use this tool, but actually knowing Git was something that you go, oh right, that's something I now need to do as well as learning the programming languages. And so these vibe coders, I think, don't even know it exists as a concept. They're maybe still doing the folder with final, and uploading videos and all sorts to it. So yeah, if you get it wrong, it just ruins everything. Get it right and it solves everything. So yeah.
Yeah,
but there's still lots of confusion about Git commands like Git rebase and Git these kind of things. Like there's a lot of people who squash the whole database every single time they do a commit, rather than understanding all the different methods out there. There's a great blog by someone, Evans, and she keeps just talking about like Git secrets that you don't know about. And I'm thinking we're going to do a blog magazine article about this, like 20 years of Git, and here's like 15 articles on Git that make sense to read up on. But I myself am guilty of that. I use the same commands every single time rather than like being really clever about it. Microsoft was very diligent about like having different branches for each developer, and making sure that every pull request has an own branch as well. So that felt also confusing for me at times. But I think it makes you a better developer, and especially easier to work with if you know your Git.
Yeah, definitely. So it's basically part of your kind of soft skills that you need as a developer. Similarly, you could also argue that it's beneficial to like know your IDE in and out. Like if you know all the keyboard shortcuts and commands, and if you know what features it offers, because sometimes there are features buried inside these IDEs, and you're looking for something that does the job, and you are just unaware of your IDE that you already possess. Being able to do that. So yeah, it should be taught as well. Yeah.
Keyboard shortcuts are a big one. I mean, I keep coming back to this. I think one of my favorite is still the Command-Shift-A in Chromium browsers, which shows you all the tabs that you have, and you can search them. And if there's a tab that plays video, it's always the first one. So if you restart your browser and there's this random blaring video, you will always know it's there, basically. So that's really, really nice to just go through all the browser windows that you have open and all the tabs that you have open. But then again, it might be a homemade product of mine because I have so many tabs open.
Yeah, no, it's very useful. So I usually use there's this little arrow, like this chevron thing somewhere at the top bar. That's what I use, and then you can search as well. But yeah, I didn't know about that shortcut, so learned the next thing today. Really nice.
It's tricky because if you know them, then becomes muscle memory, as you said, with like using Windows and stuff. And people look at you like, oh my God, how effective are you? And how can I do this? And what's the keyboard shortcut? I don't know. I just do it like because
it just happens.
No, Chris, you're being humble there, because I thought I knew a lot. You know, I know lots of different software from doing video, and I thought, yeah, do you know what? There's nobody who knows more. No, there is. You know pretty much every shortcut there is. The things that I didn't even know you could shortcut. Sometimes you're like, yeah, here's how you can press this one button and jump across 6 different softwares and send yourself an email and whatever.
Well,
Yeah, it makes you more effective
crap.
and faster, and so it's really cool. And you also maybe you don't have like a context switch, because every time you need to like leave your keyboard and search for your mouse or trackpad, it's some kind of a friction which you just don't have if you stick to like using the keyboard.
Yeah, my computers were always too slow. Like using the mouse was always very, very slow. And that's why I learned all these keyboard shortcuts. I just bought yesterday, I bought myself a mouse pad, and I thought I'm back in the 80s or something, because somehow my desk was too slippery for the mouse, for the magic mouse, the great one that you charge on the bottom. And my favorite was that I realized I ordered it in Germany, because 2 minutes later, an email came, here's your warranty for your mouse pad. And I'm like, what the hell is a warranty for a mouse pad?
Yeah. Yeah, Germany is very special. Also, that warranties are limited to 20 years or something. So I think there's these the Zippos, the lighters from Zippos, they have lifelong guarantee, but that's not allowed in Germany for some, I don't know, for some reason it's not allowed or possible. So they have to limit it to 20 years. Yeah. So very weird. And also, like, there's also the Himalaya salt, and they have to print like a due date on it, even though it's 1 million years old already, and probably will still be good in 1 million years. Yeah, but that's in Germany we are.
I love that there's a lot of games that say like the ages and it's up to 99, and you got like people that go over 100 now and they're not allowed to play any longer. That's basically it. Like.
Yeah, that's when they die, because Germans die at 100 years because life becomes boring.
Well, also because we worked happily more than we need to for 40 years straight for the same company, and the company is always right. That's the other thing that's happening. No, it's not anymore, but okay.
Yeah, it's not anymore. That's true. Yeah, but in Germany we have this tend to do gold plating. So basically taking some kind of norm and thinking, we should do it even better than that, and it gets worse.
Now, a web readiness report just came out, and it made me. There's in CSS Tricks, there was this article about it, and I totally forgot about the HTML5 readiness website. And you actually do a CSS podcast or training, whatever thing as well, and probably you remember that one as well, where it showed like which parts of CSS3 are available in which browser, and it was in this nice little sparkline interface.
Yeah, but long ago. So that were the times when Safari was still pushing out like the good stuff, or the like they are again, but back in the days they were legendary and everybody was really keen on these kinds of things. And like those were the times when there was also this CSS3 Please website where you could create all kinds of vendor prefixed thing, basically what auto prefixer does nowadays. Yeah,
there's a few still left, but I think most of them are dead by now. Like browser prefixes are unnecessary by now.
Yeah,
I think the only one that I can think of is like stenciled out text, like gradient text that still needs the Safari one.
Yeah, but the fun thing is that I think it's supported in other browsers too, because at a certain point in time, other browsers, because of us authors not like being too lazy, we didn't want to touch websites again after launching them. And so we wouldn't update them with the other browsers prefixes when they started supporting these features as well. So I think Firefox, for example, supports a lot of WebKit prefixed things.
Yeah, Edge needed to as well, because it would break the web if we didn't. Because people just put it in there for iOS websites, and that was the thing. Dan, you tried gradient text the other day, and you were annoyed about this, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things again. I'm a Tailwind fan, sorry, but Tailwind makes that so straightforward, and they actually just cover up the fact that it's not really, because I don't know what's happening under the hood there, right? To make that kind of standardized across different browsers, and it feels frustrating that something that feels very simple. I think back to being sort of in the world of graphics at like 13, 14 years old and being on like Paint Shop Pro, and I'm able to do gradients and then masking it around the text. It's very simple, but to find that still very tricky in a code environment is kind of frustrating when you're not even using complicated code. It feels like, how do we not support things that seem, and again, there'll be somebody who says yes, because displaying that on the browser is perhaps more intensive than it would be to put it, display it in video context. But yeah, it just feels frustrating when something as simple as that is still not really supported, and you feel you're in like murky territory of having to do essentially very hacky code, or use Tailwind and then not understand if that, or not even really know if that's going to actually display in the right way across browsers, because you're just assuming Tailwind do the work for you.
Yeah. Photoshop 4 didn't have like an outline and stuff, so you basically had to do a drop shadow with like no blur, and it's slightly bigger than the thing that you had to do, and it always felt like really icky.
Yeah, and not right, because you don't actually get the 3D-ness. You just you can see the shadow is just the text behind, can't you? It's like a putting something against a wall. You see the outline, but it's not connecting to the object. So it's people using it for like that fake 3D look, and you're going, that doesn't look 3D. That's just a drop shadow. Yeah.
Like with text shadow, that's where you simulated stroke lines. I think nowadays you can indeed use stroke. That's possible, but for a long time you couldn't. So you had to place text shadows with like at least 4 with a 1 pixel offset into each direction. Yeah. But
once you programmed a drop shadow or like a Gaussian blur, and you basically did it on a pixel level, you know why it's so bad for browsers, especially in scrolling environments at times. So there's a lot of caching that has to be done to make it not be really, really janky.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think browsers are also, or some browsers limit the size that you can specify these things. Like for example, for box shadows and also Gaussian blur filters, because they would just freeze or explode if it's too big. Yeah.
No,
but I just want to say that what you just said then reminded me of this feature where you could like cut off text after a certain amount of lines that you could define. So this was also like a bit complicated to do, and also only possible in Safari first. And I think you had to use like the old Flexbox thing that existed first, because I think we had 3 or 2 iterations of Flexbox. So you had to use the old one, like the very first one, and only then you could add this second feature and it would work. And they standardized that. So nowadays it's really easy to do. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know why that got awareness and your feature didn't. So maybe we should raise awareness.
Yeah, maybe
they were too busy fixing.
A big player from a newspaper or something that they needed it for their layouts and stuff. Like, yeah, that might be normally the push that they need to do. And then they sponsor companies like Igalia to actually build it rather than like the browser makers themselves. That's interesting as well to see.
Yep.
I found the people here, Paul Irish, I mean, he's still at Google, I think, and he's now a product manager or something. And he is not as loud as he used to be. Like, he was really, really big in the HTML5 days. And Divya Manian, I don't know what happened to her. She kind of like completely vanished. Do you remember where she went or what's going on with her?
Yeah, so I think she, at a certain point in time, she switched over to Apple.
Okay.
And sometimes people like not vanish, not in real life, but from stage when they switch to Apple, to working at Apple. But I think she is on the socials again, so you can find her, and I'm following her on one of those, but not sure which one. So she's still there, and I think she's also still with Apple, and she does also product management for WebKit or Safari.
Yeah, so that's the new web readiness page here, what they have, and I think it's beautifully done as well. So basically, that's just showing the different. You can go through the different specs that basically you can see where they're coming from, and you can see the support for the browser in that interface. I'm not sure it needs to actually animate every single time I go through it, but okay. And then it basically, you can see which browser supports it what, and then you can show it as list, and that's also flashy.
I wonder a bit who picked specifically these features, because it's a wild mix of features. So some things which are really fundamental, and then other things which are like nice to have, or maybe even special interest stuff like crossfade, for example. So crossfade is really nice, and you can give it to image sources, and it will, and then like a percentage, and it will blend both. And that's only supported in WebKit right now, and Chromium, of course, as well. And that's why. So why is that in here? So do people need that even? I don't know.
Would be interesting. I think it's on GitHub, the whole page, so we can do a pull request and ask what's going on there. I mean, if for CSS is an interesting one, because I found like media queries is a different way of if, and it's sometimes really hard to get for people to get their head around. So if might make that easier. But yeah, it feels like to me we're so close for CSS and JavaScript being kind of the same language with completely different syntax. Like mixins and functions and like all the things that are coming right now.
Yeah, one thing I always wanted to build, which I like, you always have ideas, and then it's a lot of work, and you never find time for it, and it's also complicated. But what I always wanted to do is like build some kind of Excel thing, but that would calculate everything just with CSS, with all the like you have all calc functions and min-max and trigonometric functions, and then soon if and these kinds of things, and then like build a JavaScript version of it side by side, and then like do like a comparison of speed. So that would be nice. It would still be nice, but it's a hell of a lot of work, I think.
It would be interesting to see, because JavaScript engines can optimize that stuff. The CSS engine, I'm quite sure, optimizes a lot of other things, but not the functionality part of it.
No, but it's so the on the other hand, it's implemented in C right from the get-go. So and it's a compiled thing. So might end up faster than JavaScript.
Interesting. Now, accessible color picker, I think it's just a tool that I found rather cute. So basically, it shows you the whole ratio and explains the bits to you, like where it fails and where it passes. And I think that's, again, Dan, that's probably down your alley, right?
Yeah, you know me, anything to do with color, I just love it. I mean, you know, it's not on the surface anything new, right? It's an accessibility contrast checker. I think you know, Chris, you've shown before. It's in DevTools, and there's they're rolled into lots of, you know, Adobe products and things like this. But there is that top right-hand corner where it's got the show gamut. And we were a couple of weeks ago at the State of the Browser in London, and there was a really good speaker there who did I think actually you might have known that person, Chris, but they did a fantastic session all about color and how it's not. Thank you. Good for the shout out. Yeah, did a really good session, you know, all about these kind of different color profiles and how the essentially you can, with one gamut or one color profile, you can, and I'm butchering this for anyone that's a real color sort of specialist, but essentially there are certain color profiles where colors don't exist, if you like, or if you try and access colors in a certain range, it just moves it to the nearest one that's available because the color you've selected might not exist. So this is just a really good way of now actually knowing concrete, you know, with your selected gamut and color profile, or color format rather, if this passes. So it shows there's a lot more to color. I think we all just go, oh, it's RGB or it's hex or it's HSL or whatever it is we're using, but you know, on there's plenty more, and yeah, with it comes issues. So yeah,
I like how it shows the gaps in the different spaces in the select bars here. So basically make that more understandable to you what's going on there. It's still completely incomprehensible to me, but it's great that we have Miriam Suzanne, I think it is, that built it with Color.js. So
or at least the company she works for might also have been someone else. Yeah,
it could be. But yeah, well, very, very nice little tool. And I love that it actually allows you to copy it in any of these formats as well. So that's pretty nice to see. Now, this is another one that I just looked at, and I have no idea what it is. Has one of you take a closer look to what he means? PPI Retina thing. I just wanted to know what the hell it's about, but like, if any of you doesn't know either, it's like, it feels like to me Retina is more like a marketing term than a technical term.
That's what I got.
Definitely.
Yeah, it did seem like that. It sort of seemed like it was a really exciting way of like differentiating yourself. It's a bit like with TVs when they could say, you know, what was it, HD ready? Just HD then, really, doesn't it? But it was a really nice way of putting it, you know. Yeah, and Retina was something where it was like, you know, Retina display, and you thought, wow, that sounds really futuristic, and I'm not even going to be able to see the pixels. You know, we're going into a post-pixel kind of age, and I mean, does anyone really care? Is that just me?
Well, I remember when Retinas came out, and everybody and their dog sent me an email that my blog looks shit on Retina because my photos are not like 6,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels. But that kind of went away, so people are not that excited about it anymore.
Yeah, it's just a given nowadays. I think it's a bit like when I first watched DVD. I felt like, well, it's a bit nicer, but it's still like the same experience. But then I got used to DVDs, and then I went to a friend who still had a VHS player, and they wanted to watch a movie with me, and I was like, I just can't. It's impossible. So I got used to DVDs, and the same goes for Retina displays. We get used to that, and it's just the new normal, and we only notice when we have like old screens in front of us.
I think there's also good interpolation happening. I mean, I see like 480 pixel resolution videos on like a 4K Retina display, and it still looks okay because it seems like the operating system, especially Mac, does interpolation between the pixels rather than just showing you blocky stuff. So it seems to be not that, like, I don't know. And I thought PPI is something you get from public bath, like swimming pools, but
yeah. If you don't, if you're not careful, you can have PPI. That's true.
Typo minimizing keyboard. This is also an interesting one. This is always the endless discussion. What is the best keyboard layout for developers? And we had it earlier with like German and American, and like, and that's basically, he did like an iteration thing about finding out which the best layout is that actually stops from, it's an interesting research into that topic. I think Dvorak was an interesting one to try at times, but then I just realized it's too much effort.
I know one person that switched to Dvorak layout and uses that, but I guess that person is unable to use any like other keyboard anymore.
Yeah. I think there's just typos that should be redirect. The amount of times I type .cim instead of .com, and .cim doesn't exist, so just redirect to the com. You know, that would be one way of doing it. But it's interesting that there's this research. I mean, there's a whole story about like how frequency in English words made the layout of the keyboard that we use right now. It's not about typing keyword on the first line, which is like one of those urban myths. But it's an interesting idea to think about those.
I was just wondering, so I recently also wondered, why do we have autocorrect on mobile phones, where it kind of sucks sometimes, but not on desktop machines? Because even if we have these keyboards, sometimes we have these typos, and I think we should have more or less fault positives, I think, because we already, like, the basis of what we type is already pretty good, so it should be easier for the autocorrect to guess what word we are talking about.
I guess there's a lot of AI stuff happening now, where it says like, okay, in any form field on Windows machines, you basically get like asked to, should I automate that for you, and these kind of things. But yeah, I guess the learning from the mobile phone was the interesting bit, that it learned which words you used and kept you those more frequently as well. So T9 was actually cleverer than we give it credit for. I had a thing the other day that drove me absolutely nuts. Is I got a package from DHL. I'm not going to mention the company, from DHL, and they basically said there's got to be one of those boxes where you can pick them up. And there's 2 packages. And I basically went there, and the first one in the email, I got a QR code, scanned it, and I got the package. Great. Second one didn't have a QR code in the email, and I'm like, okay, so how do I get my package now? And it basically said like, yeah, it's in your mailbox. So I cycled home and basically looked in my mailbox, nothing. So I basically went to the app, and there's this chat system that helps you with stuff. So I started using that chat system, and it couldn't help me, basically. It was basically saying like, oh, I can't understand what you're saying. You're weird. I don't want to talk to you. Basically talk to a real person after 10 o'clock. And then I called the person, and the person told me, oh, it's in the wrong box. So it's actually in another box. You have to go over there. And here's your 20-character code that you can write now on a piece of paper that I'm calling you on the phone with. So I wrote that thing down and went to the other box. And of course, there was no package there. I didn't understand the code. So I went back to the first one, and then I got the code. But what was even more annoying was that in the chat system, and I can't bring it up here right now, basically when you start typing things, it actually opens the keyboard, and the keyboard doesnst go away. So basically, it kept covering the field that I was typing things in. So I kept mistyping things, because I guess they used 100 VH for the head of the app or something, and didn't realize that the virtual keyboard might be overlapping it. Do you know how to fix that in CSS, or is it just something that we have to live with, that people don't care?
Well, yeah, you have to have enough padding bottom, basically. I think that's what you would have to add. One thing that iOS does. So was it iOS?
No, it's Android.
Android, yeah, because iOS forces the layout to shift to the top when you focus an input, even if the layer is fixed. So usually I hate that behavior, and I try to battle it. And there's also certain ways to do it. But in these cases, it saves DHL from having or delivering something that is unusable. So yeah, you should compare that to an iOS device. Maybe that would have saved you in that case.
Well, this was an interesting one, and I found it really, I was reading halfway through, and I just didn't understand the problem. So hiding elements that require JavaScript without JavaScript was the premise. And it basically was like, okay, you got a button that is basically a share button that needs JavaScript, and you do JS enabled on the body to actually hide it. That was a very clever, classic thing. And then they start mucking around with no script. And I think as soon as you have to use no script, you're doing something wrong. Because I don't understand the logic here that you actually put a no script style block and create a DSJS required. Like, if the button is only usable with JavaScript, why don't you create it with a DOM?
Yeah, true. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you want to, you don't want to put unnecessary load onto the browser. Like each DOM element that you add to the DOM causes reflows and all these kinds of things. So yeah, but the idea in general is a good one, to either not render elements until the JavaScript is there that they depend on, or to disable them until this JavaScript is there. The big question is, so I don't know how old this post is. It's from this year. So I wonder why that person didn't just use the media query for it. So we have a media query for JS enabled, I think.
Yeah.
And that, or scripting or something like that, which would have been maybe the most elegant solution. Yeah, but the underlying idea and concept makes sense, even though the practical execution might lack a bit.
Yeah, it feels weird to basically like, probably because you want to style it and you don't want to turn on JavaScript all the time, or I don't know, but like it feels weird. Also, it doesn't really help if the functionality is only available with JavaScript and you it's still activatable. Like, I mean, if you have like a screen reader or something that takes like a snapshot of the page after it loaded, it needs to have a disabled attribute on the button then as well until it's actually enabled.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You still...
Yeah, that would be the better approach to render, like to ship it disabled or with disabled attribute, either on the input element or button, or on the, I think you can also disable whole field sets and maybe even forms, I'm not sure. And then to, like, once the JavaScript is there, to activate it. But the big thing that is still unsolved is these, like, people always assume there's this, people have JavaScript turned off all the time, or they have JavaScript turned on all the time. But there's also these in-between states where we don't have like good solutions for. For example, if JavaScript runs and errors out, then JavaScript is active, and maybe did some things, and then died. And that also makes a UI unusable. So yeah, it's a hard thing to solve.
Window on error, do the JS enabled thing, the disabled thing, like that would be one way of doing it.
Yeah,
which is like catch all kind of things. So yeah, I remember the what was it? Give your web app the native experience. Window on error, window close.
Yeah, that's the good old Windows experience to cycle back to the beginning. Yeah. So one thing also that you should do is, once you attach an event handler to something, don't prevent default right away. Do that at the very end of your execution stack. So if it breaks, then you do not disable the default behavior of the interface element. So that's one thing you can do. Like somebody that also bears my last name, Matthias Schäfer, wrote a nice long blog post about these kinds of problems. So maybe that's also something to link to in the show notes. I'll get it later and send it to you.
Cool. Yeah. And CSS Naked Day is coming. What
Today,
is CSS Naked Day? Dan, tell us all about CSS Naked Day.
Right, now I thought the name, okay, I get it, there's the pun, show off your body. I was pretty sure, I was like, oh, it's going to be showing everyone your CSS file, showing how messy and ugly it is, and how we're not as like clean coded as we like to think. But it looks like it's more so about a commitment to, on one day, a commitment to like good standards, clean CSS, helping share good practices, and that, I think, is the idea behind it. I think calling it CSS Naked Day, bit confusing, but it got our attention, so it works, right? It's a shame the way the internet works.
Sex sells. Yeah,
it does.
I mean, we it's been around since 2006, and I think it was interesting to see like the amount of submissions back then and this amount of submissions right now. It basically is on the day, turn off all CSS on your blog to show that HTML structure makes sense without any styling. And I think, it didn't take off as much as we wanted it to, but it was, I think it came out of at Media Conference, or was it like Frontiers even that you're part of, Chris? I don't know. It's like one of the conferences basically said like, hey, how about we show off a day where CSS is basically turned off? And what would your website still look like, or will it still work? And I think that's an interesting concept, but yeah, it feels a bit out of date. And it's not as successful as it used to be.
Yeah, I think it stems from a time where we had these web standards. How do you basically people advocating for web standards and to not style your page with HTML and all these kinds of things, but to use CSS. But that's now also a given, I think. So on the one hand, nobody uses font and M and H1 to just style things. Sometimes they still do. And on the other hand, everybody agrees on, yes, use style sheets for styling and HTML to basically model the message or the page. And it's similar with the Blue Beanie Day, which also exists. which is on another date during the year, where you also just show
write
that
about web standards to celebrate Seltman's book back
Yeah.
then. Like that's where it
Yeah.
came from, like styling with web standards, the book where you wore what is Blue Beanie Hat, and basically that was like a gang sign amongst web developers, so to say, back then.
Yep.
There's also the JS Naked Day at one time. Somebody tried to bring in, and that didn't take off as much. Where basically turn off JavaScript in your thing, and still, if everything works.
That sounds like it could have been Hayden Pickering, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it seems like the community is not as big as it used to be. Like these things took off much more than the past.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also because it got really spammed. I remember like CSS Zen Garden at one time was just full of like random stuff, or the microformats wiki, which was like websites that use microformats, and that was like full of spam pages and like adult stuff and all kind of things sooner or later. And you're like, okay. So I guess the perils of an open submission form are still a thing.
Yeah. People craving for SEO backlinks, whatever quality they are. Yeah.
Well, cool. This was a lot of stuff to go through. We actually thought we're going to talk more about like the web development world in Germany, but we could do that in another one if we wanted to.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think it's an interesting bit. I also found the other day that the maintainer of Self-HTML followed me on some social media platform, and I'm like, holy shit! I learned everything from that website in 1997.
Yeah.
And that's
so
basically.
Maybe we have to explain it to the non-German spectators. Self-HTML was a spin-off of a huge book that somebody wrote, and they carried it over to the web, to the internet, and it was basically MDN when MDN didn't exist. And we learned everything from it. And then there was also a spin-off called Self-PHP, which I also used to learn PHP back in the days, because I didn't want to include my menu with frames anymore. I wanted to find a way to do that, like to include snippets with PHP. And so, we owe them a lot. Nowadays, they are, very, like, they got forgotten a bit, but there's still people working on it. And they celebrate their 30th birthday this year.
Okay.
So, as you said, I also run a German language podcast, and we will have them in a few weeks on our show. And
cool.
They'll tell us about it.
Stefan Münzinger was his name or something?
Stefan Münz, yes.
Münz,
He is also still around. Yeah, he might be on the podcast as well.
It was also a newsletter, and it was also a forum, and that was the really good thing about it, because you could discuss all the bits in there, much like the PHP documentation became much more useful because there's comments by people rather than just the documentation. And it was incredibly forward. It was not standard based to a degree. It had like things that were only JavaScript and only things that were only for IE. Because I remember there was like an IE only multi-level drop-down thing you can do in JavaScript inside the browser based on VML or some crap like that. And it was the only documentation I've ever found about this, or the page transitions for Internet Explorer 4 were described there as well, much like what we have now with with the new features in CSS back then. And that was
also before web standards even became a thing. That was just the landscape back then, with layers in Netscape and these ActiveX effects in IE and all these kinds of things. Yeah, so
I remember
good memories, I'd say.
Window open and then writing a frame set into the opened window to actually have like a perfect pixel sizing and like nested frame sets, and then trying to find parent, and then the JavaScript on that one. And it's like, it was just DOM within Windows, and it was really bizarre. Let's just be happy that we don't have to deal with these kind of things any longer. And I mean, nowadays we just ask the machine to do everything for us, and the code will be perfect, and there won't be any security or performance issues at all with your vibe coded game. Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much.
It was a pleasure being here. It was fun. It went by really quick. So
yeah,
it was great. Let's repeat it one day.
Cool. You're always welcome, and hope to see you in July as well in Berlin. So we'll go from there. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Chris. This was WeAreDevelopers Live for today, and we're going to see you next Wednesday, and you're going to see the recording soon. So bye-bye.